How's it going? This is Andy Padilla. I'm the Director of Training at Rainier Arms Firearms Academy. Today I'll be assisted by Don Smith. He's my chief instructor. And basically what we're going to be doing today is walking Forrest here through zeroing this magnified optic on this gun. It's going to be a pretty cool process. We're going to kind of go in depth in a few things. So stick around, pay attention, because we're going to be covering some things in here and we're going to quiz you at the end. If you get the quiz right, you might have an opportunity to win a little bit of swag.
All right, guys, so first things first, right? We got to talk about building the most stable platform, and I'm going to give you a couple considerations on how to do it. So let's say you don't have a bipod on your gun, right? I've removed the bipod from this gun right here, but let's say you've got some bags or shooting pillows or these shooting bags like this. You can definitely use these in place of a bipod, right? Being able to get the most stable base that you can with this thing when you're trying to zero it is very important. So what you can do is you can stack these in this fashion, or if you have more, you can stack more. If you have bigger ones, you get different heights. Even a pack, like a backpack on a couple-day hike, you can use that as well. Just lay them down something like this and put the handguard right here on the gun. Make sure it's not resting on the barrel. Make sure it's on the handguard. And then you can even add a squeeze bag like this. This is filled with like little pellets and sand, and as you squeeze it, it'll adjust the back end of the gun up and down. It gives you an even more stable base. It basically works something like this. You can plant the gun, and then as you squeeze it, it'll move the gun up and down for you after you get into your position behind the gun. So this is definitely an option. What if you don't have a bipod? What if you don't have shooting bags or a pack or anything? You just have your gun and that's it, right? We can work the prone position for that one. Key points here, one of them, make sure you build the most stable base that you can. Try to get as much bone under the gun as you can. Muscles can fatigue, so we want to get as much bone under there as we can. They won't fatigue like muscles will. You'll have a better zero, a more accurate zero, getting more bone under the gun. So first things first, my gun's ready to go. I've got my stock extended all the way. I'm going to go ahead and start building my position. All right, so forward hand, forward elbow. At this point, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get the stock into my shoulder so that I can start looking through the optics. So I'll take this stock, get it up in the pocket of my shoulder. Now that it's in the pocket of my shoulder, I'll take my firing hand, get a nice high firm grip, and then use my firing hand elbow to go ahead and finish off this position right here. Now I can begin to worry about my point of aim. All right, so now that I've got my position built, I'm going to finish this off with a nice firm cheek weld. Again, firm cheek weld. So go ahead and get your cheek on that stock, nice and firm.
For the rest of this period, we're going to be going off of bipods. All right, we're not going to be supported by bags or anything like that. We're just going to work off the bipods, and we're going to build this position. Right now, what we got them set in, we're going to make some minor adjustments here, but what we got them set in is a straight leg shooting position. It's kind of directly behind the gun, and it's the most preferred. You got a lot of body behind the gun, a lot of mass. It takes up some of that recoil that happens with the gun, and you'll end up having a little bit less deviation from your natural point of aim, which we'll talk about here shortly. So I'm going to make some minor adjustments here real quick. Kind of get your body back behind the gun a little bit more. There you go. And then spread your feet apart. Get this one out. There you go. We're nice and there you go. Good. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get his non-firing hand, and we're gonna give it some work, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to have your hand kind of like a wedge shape like this. You're going to flip it over, and you're going to put it right under here, and you're going to grab it just like this. And all you're doing is just supporting it up into your shoulder. Okay. It's not going to be anything heavy. You're not going to be pulling it super tight. All you're doing is kind of giving it some support so it stays there. So just like you have in a bipod, this arm right here is providing support for the rear of the gun. Does that make sense? Okay. Your firing hand, you want to have it nice and high, and you want to have a good firm grip around that pistol grip. Does that make sense? So get it nice and high, nice and firm. Keep that finger straight just so you go just like that. Everything about this position looks pretty good. A big piece here, because depending on the optic and where the placement is going to be eye relief. Eye relief is kind of like a big deal. So there's a thing called scope shadow. So if you're kind of set back some, as you're looking through the optic itself, you'll end up getting a little bit of shadow around the outer edge, right? As you press your face closer to the optic, typically it's going to be about 3 to 4 inches, maybe 2 to 3 inches, kind of depending on the optic itself. But you want to get this eye relief, that money eye relief. So go ahead and adjust your head forward or back, whatever you need to relieve that scope shadow so it's out of there. So you got the full view as you're looking through that optic. Let me know when you got it. Got it? Mm-hmm. Okay. So once you got that, you're pretty much dialed in as far as where your position needs to be. A good thing is kind of remember where your placement is, right? If you can remember where that cheek placement is on that stock, or how far in you need to have that stock, because it is an adjustable stock. If you have to adjust it from either further all the way out, or however many clicks in you need to in order to achieve that, then remembering that for this platform would be a good thing. All right, so the next thing we're going to be getting into is going to be our fundamentals of marksmanship here. That's going to allow us to get some good well-aimed, well-placed shots. And these fundamentals, the things we're going to be talking about is going to be aiming, breathing, and trigger control. This first thing we're going to be getting into is going to be our natural point of aim. So why natural point of aim is important is when he's in a position and he's completely relaxed, and that gun is sitting where it's sitting, in its most relaxed position, that'll be what we call a natural point of aim, if that makes sense. Sometimes and go ahead and look through there now for us, and let me know where your reticle is. So on that far left target, I want you to go with that center dot, that dead center on that silhouette. Okay. On the far left target. Okay. So now close your eyes and just relax. Okay. Close your eyes. Inhale. Deep breath. Exhale. All the way out. Keep your eyes closed. Now open your eyes and look through the optic and let me know where it's resting. Don't adjust the gun or anything. Just stay nice and relaxed, as relaxed as you can be, and just look through the optic and let me know where your reticle is resting.
Right above where I had it before.
Right above where you had it? Okay, so his natural point of aim is a little off. There was a little bit of adjustments he was making before he relaxed, and he was adjusting his gun to where he wanted it to rest, right? But when he completely relaxed, it was off a little bit because that's where it naturally rests. So what we're going to do, since it was high, is we're going to make some adjustments here. Since he's on a bipod, we're simply going to, with that rear hand, go ahead and move it to where your elbow comes in, and that raise up that rear stock a little bit higher in the shoulder. See if you can do that.
Okay. There we go.
So now go ahead and look through it and let me know when you're dead on.
Okay, I'm there again.
Okay, now close your eyes. Relax. Inhale. Exhale. Relax. Open your eyes and look through your optic.
Okay, I'm right where I started.
So you're dead on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now that right there adjusts your natural point of aim. So some things that we need to consider if we need to make further adjustments. Earlier when Donnie had the gun in his hands and he wasn't supported by bags or any of that stuff, some things that we can do for elevation is simply slide that hand forward to lower it or bring it back to raise it. Some other things that we can do is while we're in our position, we can scoot our body forward to lower it or scoot our body back to raise it. If we're in bags and we have the sandbag supporting us in the rear, we can squeeze it to get a little bit more depression or lower it, or we can let it out to help raise that. Here, he's just working off the rear of the gun since the front of it's fixed. We can lower the front a little bit with the bipod since they are adjustable, but we're not worried about that right now since he was just a tad bit off. All right, another thing is if we need to make adjustments left and right. So, if he's resting in a natural point of aim and it's off to the left or the right, what we got to understand is whatever that focal point is up front, whether it's your forward elbow or in this case the bipod or a bag, that's what you're pivoting off of. Does that make sense? So instead of moving the gun, we want to move our whole body, right? So we're going to shift our body, basically pivoting off that forward point to the left or to the right until our sights are resting on our natural point. Breath control. Let's talk about that. There's different ways to go about it, and there's different ideas on what breath control really is, if that makes sense. So we all have a breathing cycle, right? A respiratory cycle that we have. And there's a point at the bottom of our exhale that's going to be very, very consistent, and it's going to be the same every time. So some folks, what they'll do is they'll inhale and they'll try to get as much air as they can because they're gonna pause for a second before they shoot. But the issue with that is there's some inconsistencies, right? Like I can breathe to a certain point, but the next time it might be a little bit more. Next time it might be a little bit more, or it might be a little less. And because of the inconsistencies, it would be like ungood, right? So what we're going to try to achieve is at the bottom of our exhale in our natural respiratory cycle is a point where we're going to hold our breath. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to time it, right? To where once I get to my exhale, at the bottom of my exhale, at that respiratory pause, that's not where I'm going to necessarily break my shot then. I'm going to pause and make sure everything's dialed in, and I'm going to start my shot process, which is what we're going to get into next is trigger control, but breath control is the bottom of exhale. So Forrest, what I want you to do is just kind of breathe naturally, okay? So as you're looking through your gun and you're relaxed and you're on your natural point of aim, just breathe naturally, in and out, right? Once you get to a point where you think you're ready to start this shot process, which you're not going to shoot, but I want you to find this respiratory pause at the bottom of your exhale. You're gonna pause and you're gonna relax and you're just gonna hold your breath, okay?
Okay.
So inhale, just relaxed, exhale all the way. And you're not going to force air out. Once you get to that bottom of the exhale, just pause and relax. Okay, you got it?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel?
Great.
Are you like out of breath at all?
No.
Yeah, so that's a big thing is some folks feel that at the bottom of the exhale, at that respiratory pause, they might be out of breath because they're letting air out. It's not the case. We got plenty of air in our lungs still, but what it's going to do is going to be a very consistent. It's going to be the same point like every time. And it's going to allow us to be very, very relaxed. So inhale, exhale, pause at the bottom of that breathing cycle, and then that's where you're going to go ahead and follow through with a good trigger control. Okay. We got to understand that what we're looking for is a skillful manipulation as straight back to the rear as we possibly can without disturbing that sight picture as we're looking through our optic. Does that make sense? So depending on the gun and how tricked out it is, some triggers are a little less than others, right? Some of us may we have different stages of triggers. Whatever it is, you have to identify what you have and what you're working with, and figuring out how to be able to manipulate that trigger without disturbing what you're trying to achieve while you're looking through your sights. So ideally what he's going to do is you want to have your hand up nice and high. You want to have it nice and firm, gripping around that grip. Get your finger onto the trigger where it rests naturally, but also where, what you don't want to add is unnecessary movement or pressure at an angle as you're applying rearward pressure, if that makes sense. So you want to get your finger on there to a point where you're able to press from the center of that trigger lever as straight back to the rear as possible. So go and get your finger on there just like the way you got it. So from this side, if you can see it, he's basically got like an L shape here on his finger. It's not kind of curved like this. He's got more of an L shape, so he's on the pad of his first digit, and he's gonna allow it to press straight back like this, which is what I usually do, and it's a little bit more preferred for me. But you work your trigger how you need to. Again, it's just a skillful manipulation to straight back to rear. So we're unloaded. We've already double and triple checked this. We're gonna take a couple of dry fire shots just to see while he's looking through his optic, what, if any, movement does he have in that reticle as that shot would break. So go ahead and get your finger on there, get it all set up. Use your thumb and hit that selector lever, put it on fire. There you go, perfect. So now, go ahead and go through this process. So the process you're gonna do is again, once your finger's on the trigger, you're gonna inhale, exhale, hold your breath, relax. Make sure your sights are resting right where they need to be. If they're resting where they need to be, you're gonna slowly start applying pressure. You're only gonna add pressure to that trigger if your reticle is resting right where it needs to be. All right, so when it went click, what did you see your reticle do? Anything at all? Or did it stay dead still?
It stayed dead still.
It stayed dead still? Okay, go ahead and finger straight off the trigger. Go ahead and rack that charting handle. Reset the trigger. Go and let it go. And build that position back up again. All right, go ahead and look at the optic. Inhale, exhale, hold your breath. Relax, finger on the trigger. Get that reticle where it needs to be. When everything's good, there you go. So what do you see? Anything? Stay good? All right, that's solid. Grab that magazine, go ahead and load and make ready. Perfect. Yep. Rear hand. Get that non-firing hand, there you go. Build that good natural point of aim. Double and triple check it, okay? Close your eyes, inhale, exhale, hold your breath, relax. Okay, so go ahead and put on safe. Let's talk about another thing here that's kind of important. Is there's a thing called follow through, okay? So as if you noticed when he broke that shot, immediately the finger came off the trigger. So Forrest, what I want you to do is when you're adding pressure and you're looking through your optic and everything's golden, right? Reticle's resting where it needs to, and you're adding pressure, and all of a sudden break, it goes. Stay on it.
Okay.
Follow through, settle back on your sights, and once you settle back on your sights, then go ahead and come off that trigger. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay. Because sometimes what will happen is when it breaks and you take that glitch, sometimes that reaction can cause a little deviation, and we want to just go ahead and follow through that shot, wait till we rest back on, and then come off. So go ahead and start that process all over again. Position, everything looks good. Get your natural point of aim. Make sure it's dialed in. Bottom exhale, hold your breath, relax. Look for perfection in that optic. Good. If you notice, when he broke that shot, immediately the finger came off the trigger. So, Forrest, what I want you to do is when you're adding pressure and you're looking through your optic and everything's golden, right? Reticle's resting where it needs to, and you're adding pressure, and all of a sudden break, it goes. Stay on it.
Okay.
Follow through, settle back on your sights, and once you settle back on your sights, then go ahead and come off that trigger. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Nice. Nope. Remember that follow through, not a big deal, okay? And just try to consciously think about this next process, okay? So you inhale, exhale, hold your breath, finger on the trigger, follow through after that shot. Just hold it back, wait till, see how you came off that trigger? Easy. You're getting there. Pause. There you go. Once you settle back on, go ahead and release, put the gun on safe. All right. All right, so right now what we're doing is we're heading down range. We're gonna go check out the targets, find out where his shots were on target in relation to his point of aim, and then we're gonna get back and make our adjustments that we need. All right, so as we take a look here, you know, some things that we're gonna need to work on is a little bit of trigger control, right? A little bit of breath control as well. Not a big deal. Decent group. So here's a big factor on why I like to shoot 5 rounds versus like a 3-round group or something of that nature. I get a little bit more essay from shooting 5 rounds, because in this case, you know, I got 3 rounds that are fairly consistent here and 2 that are kind of flyers. So I gotta figure out what of these are the groups that I want to go off of. Do I want to go off of these, or do I want to go off of these? Since I have more here, this is probably the group that I'm going to go off of. So I'm going to make my adjustments off of this, right? And then kind of go from there. So based off of here, what we're going to try to do is get an approximate. I can literally bust out a tape measure and get actual distances. For 100 yards in that optic that we're using, so you know, and they're all going to vary. We're looking at like 0.72, so basically roughly about 3/4 of an inch per click that we're going to be making on that optic at this distance. So if I have to come up, you know, I don't know, what do you call it, about 3 inches? You know, so we'll just call it that. If we want to come up about 3 inches, and then we're probably going to go over maybe about 4. Something of that nature. So we just kind of do the math there. Every click that we're going to make on that optic is going to be moving it about 3/4 of an inch. right? And we need to come up about 3 and over about 4. There's nothing wrong with bold adjustments. So if you want to make it a bolder adjustment and kind of go over a little bit, you know, just like bracketing when you're in the military, when we're calling for fire, you know, bold adjustments are sometimes good, okay? And then we can kind of bring it back if we need to.
So we went down and we saw the impacts on target, and we're going to work together here, me and Forrest, on the adjustments that we need to make. Now, on this particular scope, we already know the click values, which are 0.2 MRAD, and so we've got some math in our heads that we're going to work on, but we'll talk about it. But first off, what are we doing, right? So when we're making adjustments on this, we're actually shifting the point of impact of the bullets, right? We're doing things here to move the bullets where we need them to go. So let's get into it. So go ahead and remove the dust caps on the top here and on the right side. So we were 4 inches to the left and about 3 inches low. So we need to move the bullets right and up. So let's go ahead and do that. On here, 0.2 MRAD, right, which is about 3/4 of an inch. So we need to move them right. And once you go 6, did you do 6?
I did 5.
You did 5, let's go 6. All right, now we need to move 3 inches up. So each click being 3/4 of an inch, how many clicks up?
Probably about 4.
Okay, well, let's do 4. Let's see what we get. And I tell you what, once you do 5, we'll get a little bit more out of it. That'd probably be pretty close to where we need them to go. So now that we've made our adjustments on here, it's time to get back into it and try again and see where we're at on paper. What do you say?
Look for perfection. Look for perfection of that reticle. Inhale, exhale, hold your breath. Don't tell it when to fire. Let it fire when it wants. Just slowly apply pressure. Inhale, exhale, hold your breath. Get back on your reticle. Relax, nice and smooth. Slowly apply pressure. Don't tell the gun when to fire. Let it fire when it wants. That one you got on that trigger a little bit,
Yeah.
okay? Just relax. Is that 5?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead and put on safe. These will be his shots here. So center of his shot group is going to be roughly about here. We're going to work on the trigger control a little bit. There was a couple of times where he was getting on that trigger a little heavy. So we'll kind of work to that and try to get that group a little bit tighter.
And then if we go left, it's probably going to be...
Just little by little. Let it do its thing. All right. Go ahead and clear it out. This group right here, you should have felt the difference between that and then these ones here. Did you not? Did you feel when at least 3 shots that kind of came together and everything was dialed in, the gun surprised you, you didn't tell the gun when to fire, everything kind of came together. Did you feel the difference between those and like the other ones maybe? Okay.
Absolutely. I think once I finally adjusted and got that shoulder positioning right, that's when I felt more comfortable. And so those last couple of shots, I was just more flush when I was going ahead and going through that motion.
Okay. So, you know, that kind of stuff is important too. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, like in initial stages of learning about like marksmanship, precision marksmanship, whatever you need to. There are things that kind of help make that happen. if we can identify the things that are probably like ungood, that cause things, whether it's like a trigger or a breath control issue, or in this case like stock placement or whatever it is, it's good to identify those things rather than not know, right? It's not knowing and seeing all these things that are probably happening and I just don't have an idea why they're happening. But knowing why they're happening and figuring out while you're shooting, say, oh, okay, I know what that was. That was my trigger. Oh, that was my stock. Right? That's good because we can fix those things, right? It's the stuff that we don't really know what's going on and why it's happening. To try to figure that out, that troubleshooting is going to be a little bit more difficult. So it's good. It's good that you're trying to identify those things now. This many rounds into it, that's good. That's a good place to be. We're pretty much dialed in where we need to be. All we're going to do is confirm where our sights are set. And just ease on that trigger, okay? Again, once everything's dialed in, what you don't want to do is say, okay, everything's good, shoot now, okay? Just apply pressure. It's going to break when it wants to. That feel pretty good?
Oh yeah.
Good. Same thing. If it doesn't feel like that, don't follow through. Here's another mag. While he's doing this, I want to talk about a couple of things. So when it comes to trigger control, there's a couple of different types. So one is going to be an uninterrupted trigger control. If you got a perfect ideal condition where there's not really any kind of effects of wind like on you or weather that's affecting you or whatever. If you're maybe like in an unstable position, there's a method that's called uninterrupted, right? Which meaning everything is perfect, everything is still and static, nothing's moving. I can keep my reticle on target, and I can continuously apply pressure straight back to the rear without messing up my sights, and that's an uninterrupted trigger control. And there's an interrupted trigger control, or you can call it timing trigger control, where so the uninterrupted is if everything's good and your reticle's on target and everything's golden, right? But something happens, whether it's like a gust of wind that moves you or something just doesn't feel right. So if you're in the process of adding pressure to that trigger and then all of a sudden there's something that makes it ungood, you're going to pause and you're just going to hold what you got because there's an interruption. Does that make sense? So once you settle back on, then you can continue to follow through with that shot. And there's also like a timing trigger control, which I could probably talk about that when we get on target. It'll make a little bit more sense. But right now, ideally, what we'll probably end up having is if the position is fixed and it's good and it doesn't move with that reticle and it stays dead on, it'll be an uninterrupted trigger control. Just continuous pressure straight back until it breaks. And just go ahead and send one more shot, and that'll be it. Make it count. All right, go ahead and put the gun on safe, clear it out. And you got a pretty good group here, okay? So as you can see, by getting things dialed in, when it comes to fundamentals, if we can get things dialed in and make those shot placements in those shot groups a lot tighter, it's a lot easier and a lot more effective to adjust your point of aim, point of impact, right? Good job here. We're probably just going to make one click to the left, and I think we're going to be golden here. Something I want to talk about that I mentioned back there was when we come up to the target is timing trigger control. It's still a trigger control method, but it's a little bit different than what most people think sometimes. So let's say the tip of my thumb is the center of my, in this case, crosshair or my dot or whatever it is, okay? You know, ideally this is where I'm gonna want it, right? So when it's here is where I'm adding pressure. But if I have something, if I'm further out and I got my heartbeat that's causing my movement, or I just got movement period because I'm just not in the most stable position and I got wind or something of that kind of effect, I'm adding pressure here. Does that make sense? What I'm not gonna do is add pressure here, okay? So I'm just timing it. What I'm not doing is going, okay, ready, shoot, now. I'm not gonna do that. All I'm doing is just pressure, 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 bang, and it goes. Does that make sense? So I'm only gonna add pressure when it's where it needs to be, and then when it breaks, it's gonna be a good shot. That's what we call timing trigger control. It's like interrupted, but a little bit different. Right now, we're at a kind of a point where I like to ask you guys a couple of questions about what we covered today. So if you can, let us know what three primary fundamentals of marksmanship are, as well as the 3 different types of trigger controls that we talked about today. And if you can answer those correctly in our comments, you know, you have a possibility of winning a little bit of swag.
Check out our website, RainierArmsFA.com. See all the cool training classes that we offer. Come out and check out our carbine stuff. We'll teach you how to do this. Come out and train with us. We'll see you in class.